Hey, gang, welcome to another episode of Swear We Aren't Lying, where I will be doing this by myself again. And if you can't tell who this is Chloe, because I currently cannot make it up to where Zoe is since it has been snowstorming all of this past week. So here I am, uh, you know, currently freaking out because this is just kind of by impulse. Zoe and I are actually currently texting each other over what to do about this week's episode. So I just figured, screw it, we ball. And I'm gonna probably get real deep in this one, just talking about, how uncertain I am about this next year and how the last 2 years have been for me. So if you want to tune in, hopefully I don't say and a bunch of times in this next takeover like I did the last one, because my grandpa decided to be kind enough and point out that that's all I did in my last takeover, and I'm quite ashamed. So, you know, bear with me. Again, I can't promise that this episode is actually going to last like a whole 30 minutes. Might be half that time. Because I just can't really carry on a conversation without Zoe here. But also, my internet has been cutting out so bad. It's been wigging so hard because just the wind has been a monster, and it's been so hard to do homework lately. My goodness. But yeah, that is just the way life is tumbling right now. And to be honest, I can't really think of done diddly squat. I've just been doing nothing but watching Nana lately. So when Zoe texted me and she was like, "We got to think of an episode," I was like, you're so right. We do have to think of an episode. And this just happened to be the one that came to mind because it's just been on my heart lately. And if you know what I mean, then of course, how can it not be? But if you are familiar with our episode about school days a couple weeks back, we talked about how I got accepted into Biola University and how I've been working towards that happening this fall. So it's been huge. It's been all I've looked forward to for a while now, and I've worked really hard towards it, making it happen, or hoping it's going to happen. Cuz like even though I got accepted and it feels like a total guarantee, I still don't know simply because, I can't just afford all of it by myself. So at some point I'm going to have to pull out loans, and I've been offered a lot of grants and scholarships. They've been super gracious to me, actually. Um, and I don't even attend the school yet. It's like crazy how in love I am with this university, even though I've only visited twice now. And I'm actually visiting a third time this month, uh, within like the next week, actually. Wow. Okay. But yeah, it's crazy how much of it is becoming a reality and how sure I am that all of it's going to work out somehow. But, there's still like that overhanging dread that something wrong is going to happen. Like, I don't know, this next ball is going to drop just because of how the last 2 years have been for me. So, I guess what I mean by that, well, I guess I could rewind a little bit to 2020, since 2020 was a crazy year for everyone, like worldwide. How could it have not been, you know? We had this crazy outbreak and, shutdowns galore. Couldn't really socialize the way that we're able to now, thank God. But, even after COVID, everything's just been so different still. And the world has definitely changed a lot um, from what it was pre 2020. So I started attending community college in August 2020, and that whole semester was online. I was expecting us to go back in person the next semester where I would move to my grandpa's and I would just, you know, live with him while attending this community college because it was an hour away from, where I lived up in the mountains, being a small town girl. But, sad news, I found out by October we were nowhere near being in person again. So I just had to suck it up and go into the next year of 2021, still online. And, it was fine for me. Kind of like I talked about in the school days episode. I was super used to just already doing everything online because I was an independent student and I was helping a lot of my friends out and my brother out with kind of that shift in their own structure and how they understood school. So I did completely fine. And I had so many literature classes because I also decided to become an honor student during that year. But anyway, um, yeah. So we roll into 2021, and everything seems to be looking up. Uh, my guy best friend at the time, who absolutely was had this big old crush on me, was someone I decided to give a shot. And I was like, you know what? Yeah. So we got into a relationship, and this would be my first serious relationship, which is something I've, talked about in past episodes, sorta, kinda. I still don't want to go into too much detail because, I feel like some things are better off private, even though I've been very public with many things before. But yeah, I think that there were just a lot of mistakes that were made and we rushed into a lot of things. And because of that, just because of, where we were in life and our own maturity at the time, things didn't work out and we ended up being super angry at each other. And so it created a lot of wounds within those next 6 months. And those wounds were something I had to wrestle with for a while. And, there's certain things that I'm still healing from over what he did to me, and certain things that I still have to process internally. But I also try to just take a step back and understand all that with grace and just pray that in time he realizes, how he hurt me. And he grows from that, just like I'm growing from what I did to him. Cause there were plenty of things that, I did too that were wrong and faults of mine that I had to learn from. And that's just life. You just go through stuff, and especially when it's your first try at something so serious too, you're bound to make mistakes, but you got to get up and you got to improve from that. But so our relationship lasted for 6 months, and it being the real deal, I was cloud 9 and whatever. And you know it eventually became summer break, where we rushed into it so fast that I was kind of just already living with him within 3 months. And yeah, it got to the point where I was deep in his community of like church, his band, his family, all his other friends, and it was fun. None of it, even with how much pain it caused later, none of it was anything that I ended up regretting, and I still don't regret what happened. I think if anything, it was exactly what I needed to go through in order to just be where I am now. But the reason that it hurts so bad is because when, he did break up with me, there was like really no closure that came with it. It was just so sudden and none of it really made sense. But at the same time, it kind of did. Just in that moment, it really rocked my world because I was like, well, your community is now my community, like I'm just as involved as you are. So how am I supposed to just, I didn't even really get to say goodbye actually. And that's why it rattled me so much. Like everything that seemed to make sense just didn't anymore. And it just shattered my world because we went from being really good to just suddenly nothing. And it all happened instantly. But so did the relationship. Like the relationship itself just happened just instantly from when we started talking again. Because like we met over COVID online on the Christian dating app. Then we took a break from talking to each other because there was just, mixed signals and mixed feelings and whatever. And we just figured like that would be the healthiest thing for us. And then he came back into my life the beginning of 2021. We hit it off. I realized, oh, I do have feelings for you. And then that's when we started to rush into things. Yeah, and I still don't really know how things got so ugly from what they were. But, again, that's just with time. And sometimes time doesn't heal all wounds, and that's okay. There's just certain things with grief that you're not meant to really understand, and it can take years from now or a whole lifetime, but I'm sure one day, we all get an answer that we deserve. And that sounded really dramatic for something being like my first relationship / breakup, But, when you're a 20-year-old girl who's wrestled with her sexuality all her life and has never really understood herself, has never really understood like what that means for her. And then to have like this, I don't know, sort of conviction all of a sudden at like 15 years old, where you're now like, well, I don't want to follow this. I don't want to be same-sex attracted, but here I am, like, now living this life where like I deal with it. So how do I go about actually having a romantic relationship with the opposite sex when that's not naturally what I'm attracted to? It was a huge ordeal for me. It was huge. Like he was also my first kiss. He was someone I experimented a lot with. We did a lot together. That was like a first for both of us. And so, of course, it just totally broke my heart when at the end of the summer, it just wasn't anything anymore. And here I was back in my hometown without any chance of saying goodbye to this new community I just developed for myself. Just, you know, back to dog sitting being my only type of job, trying to freelance full time because I decided to drop out of school because I felt really screwed over. My plans weren't working out. Counselors kind of just screwed me over again because, when do they not screw over college students? So yeah, here I was just kind of lost for the first time. Just thinking that everything was working out the way it was supposed to, just to have it like splat all over the floor. And I just felt like a total loser. I felt like everything that I had worked towards just mounted up to nothing. And so I got really depressed. I just fell into this deep pit that I was not going to climb out of for a while. And of course, this caused a lot of resentment toward God. Because, for me, I've been very blessed. I've been very fortunate in the area of like always knowing what I've wanted to go after and do with my life. I know a lot of people who struggle with that and are still trying to figure it out, who go to college with an undecided major, which is totally fine. I think you have all the time in the world to figure out what it is you want to do. But for me, it's very different. Like, ever since I formed a conscious thought, I just knew what I was meant to do and what I wanted to do, and that just has always been my driving force. And so I thank God for that every day, that that's something that I was just born with, you know? But freelancing was not going to work out because, we were moving on from COVID, the COVID shutdown, where not as many people were like turning online to like collaborate as much. Because over COVID, I actually got my first online job, like my first serious online job as like an in-house graphic designer for a writing company, which was super cool because I got to meet so many people across the world, and it just created a lot of opportunities for me to meet other artists as well. But we'll talk about that in a different episode. So that was neat, and that lasted only a few months itself, but still, I don't regret that. Very, very, very thankful that that happened. And I had a thought and now it's gone. Oh, okay, that's what I was going to say. But yeah, so all these artists that I was collaborating with back when that was all happening, they kind of just like moved on and they went about their lives. And because like, society started to open up again. So of course, people started going back to school, finding work, living life. And here I was trying to freelance in a small town with little to no networking. So what do? I turn back to dog sitting, which has just always been like a good first job, highly recommended to anyone who, is nervous about starting a job and they need something. Dog sitting, dude. Make your own dog sitting business. I'm telling you, it's the best job you could have. But yeah, so that's what I just started doing around town again, and just I felt like I reverted back though, from where I was, because the thing about being with his community, it was like this punk scene out in Fresno. And I was actually like starting to make connections and people wanted to see like my art. And they started to commission me and they started wanting like banners and posters for me. So, even though a lot of it was like for exposure, I wanted to start making money from that. And it sucked because I felt like I not only lost community, I lost a lot of my clientele. And though that is for those, what am I trying to say right now? The reasoning behind that I will not go into, and I will try to keep private. But yeah. So I here I was just back in my small town, just feeling like a loser until I started to party. And the partying began in October over a Halloween party. And that's Zoe and I actually plan on talking about that in a future episode, so we'll see. But, you know, I that's when I got drunk and high for the very first time. And that feeling was something that just made me feel good for, a night to forget about like all my stuff and everything that was actually going wrong in my life. So I started to get faded almost every night. Just go out because I wanted to distract myself from being at home. And this just became like habit for the next 2 months of my life until finally a couple of my friends were like, hey, you're not okay. Let's get you back to school. And they were caring enough to actually get me to like tour their universities and see what I liked, see what was outside of like community college, and if, there was something I could just do again, and just get motivated again instead of feeling so beat down and like I was at a loss all the time. So I'm thankful for that because when it finally came to Biola, it's again, I just immediately fell in love with that school, and I'm still confident that that's supposed to be my future home. And it really got me to clean up my act. The day after I toured that campus, I went home and I immediately applied online, and I waited for them to review my application, and within a month they got back to me with that acceptance letter. And when I tell you I fell to my knees and I started bawling, like that was the first time I felt relief in such a long time. Like, okay, I have a goal again. This is great. So I actually got a job before this, and before I even knowing about the acceptance letter, and it was at Roundtable, so I could start working towards that. I work at Roundtable for like 4 months. I'm starting to clean up. I become straight edge. Totally give up smoking, drinking, all of it. Give up partying. I don't even like really go out anymore at this point. I become like a homebody because I don't want to screw up this opportunity. Because I originally planned to go last fall, but then I delayed it so I could finish up my gen ed. So I went back to the community college that I dropped out of, and I started taking summer classes, found a new job because I had to move out to my grandpa's eventually. So that original plan became my plan again. And I found a job out here at the theater at my community college. Absolutely adore it. It's the best job I've had so far, and it's just taught me so much, especially about like what I want to go into, which is production. And even though theater arts is kind of different from like film and television, it's still something that exposes me to that type of industry. And it's shown me that like theater arts can be something too. So I started over there first with front of house and then working backstage, and it's been a dream. Like all of 2022 has been like amazing, to be honest. Like it wasn't a bad year. In fact, I would have considered it the best year of my life if what happened near the end didn't happen. So I mentioned it in one of our episodes, but if you don't know, my mom actually passed this November. And I'm trying not to get choked up over it right now. But yeah, that that itself was just instant. It didn't make sense. It still doesn't make sense. And it just came out of nowhere. And so it was like re-experiencing that grief that I just worked so hard to pull myself up from all over again. And it's a grief that I've been like trying to push away because I don't want to be in that pit again, you know? And it's hard. It's like it's been super hard, like just going about my daily life. Cause like, I mean, it's my mom. She I mean, like, most people's moms, you know, they have a huge impact on who you are, and that's like your whole world from the moment that you're born. So it's been strange. Um, and I think the only reason I'm able to kind of like get through it is because my mom and I, we were going through our own thing at the time. Before she passed, we were not talking, and I think we weren't talking for like a couple months before I actually saw her again in the hospital. And I guess that kind of makes it easier. And the fact that I actually got closure with her during that week before she died, um, you know, that gives me peace. And I think that's why I don't really regret the breakup at all, because in a weird way, it prepared me to handle this. Like, it gave me the strength to not fall flat on my face again. um, so yeah. Yeah. um, I'm trying not to like. I feel like if I talk more, I'm gonna cry more. But no, yeah. Um, I've just been trying to stay motivated and just work towards Viola happening still, because gosh, I don't want to return to partying. I don't want to return to getting faded almost every other night, you know? Um when I was doing that, my mom was like so worried about me all the time. And so like this isn't something I want to do to her, especially after she's dead. Sorry. But yeah, gosh, I didn't think that this would actually hit me that hard. Like, I knew I would probably start crying at some point, but you know, not like this. But this is why it's like so important for me to just keep going, and I don't really know how I'm going to make Viola happen. I just trust that it's going to. And so I'm hoping and I'm hoping that this podcast keeps going, and I'm hoping that, you know, Road Dog Apparel, if you don't know about that, that's my brand, that I can just keep developing that, and also my production company. I want to get that launched sometime in the future. I have like all these crazy ambitions, I know. But I just want to leave with reading Romans 5 verse 3 real quick, which says, "Not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope, and hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. Because, I can't do any of this without God. And after all the trials I have gone through, all the heartbreak, all the grief, God has only become like so much more real to me because of it. We talk about finding God as like being beautiful and, graceful and elegant and all this great stuff, but we don't talk about how ugly it can get sometimes. How ugly it actually is most times. And I think that's why I'm not afraid to just be ugly right now and honest. And that's just who I want to be known for. So I appreciate it if you stuck around to listen to me ramble. And yeah. So we'll see what happens in this near future.